This is the last stone that we've been using, and that's going to be the last stone, which is Uchigumori, and next is going to be off the stones and all the polishing work afterwards. The work of Uchigumori brings out a lot of the details, makes the hamon whiter, and also gives a much smoother, cleaner look than the previous stone. Obviously, that's Komanagura. So overall, everything looks great. It's been a while since I've seen the blade, and got it back from Shirasaya, but also Yamano's engraving is done on the Nakago. So it's starting to come together really nicely. Just want to check over the blade again before I actually go back and start the polishing. So it's really nice to see it again after quite a few weeks, which is actually really nice because look at it with a more fresh eyes. Sometimes when you're sharpening the same blade over and over and over again, you kind of lose that fresh look. So from Yamano, when we sent it to him, he did all the engraving, and he also made the hole for the makugi for the shirasaya. So traditionally, the sword makers always signed the nakago, and then he engraved his name and also the date on this side. Also, he did the file work on the nakago, or the tang of the blade. Yeah, fresh nakago. It looks really beautiful when it's freshly done. After getting it back from the shirasaya maker, I'm just looking to see if there's any scratches from fitting the blade during making the shirasaya. Often when you send blades to get sayas made for kitchen knives by kitchen knife saya makers, the blades always come back with lots of deep scratches. Often, sometimes there's tiny abrasive particles from sandpaper that are left inside there. So when you go to put it in and you pull it out to check, you get really deep scratches. But shirasaya maker tend to traditionally not use any sandpaper at all, just using the woodworking tools and some other things to smooth out the saya afterwards. They're very good at being careful at not getting anything inside the saya and also outside. This is the first time the saya craftsman made a saya for a kitchen knife. Even though he said the shape is very much the same as a sword and the details, but the fitting is very different because there's no habaki or collar here. And there's a few really surface scratches here. They're quite light, they're really shallow, so they'll come out easily with the next stone. Not like you see for kitchen knives. Kitchen knives, often the knife has to actually be sent back to get reground because the scratches are so bad from the sayas. I've seen like 120 grit sandpaper particles inside the sayas that are stuck into the wood. That'll scratch anything, doesn't matter. I've seen it even scratch korochi. There's ways of fixing it, but it's not fun. I mean, I can understand they're making hundreds, so they can't be as careful. But now we're going to be moving on to the polishing process. Before, in the rough sharpening stage, we're sharpening and shaping the blade, also to get the shape, but also to make the blade sharp. And those stones before remove a lot of steel. And we got the shape correct, everything is correct, lines correct. So now these stones that we're going to be using don't remove a lot of steel. So what they're now doing is polishing rather than removing steel. So now we're just going finer to make the surface finer and finer for the last stage of polishing. These stones do remove a bit of steel, but not enough to change the shape. And all the scratch pattern will be going from this direction to lengthwise. I'll be using a synthetic Kaisei for this first stage of polishing. I'll be using a natural stone after this stage, after Kaisei. I'll switch to a natural Chunagura, and then Komanagura and Uchigumori. The reason why I'll switch to natural stones is the way that they cut the steel is much more shallow, and also they bring out a lot more detail in the steel. And for Tamahagane, I've never seen a synthetic stone that can match what a natural stone like Uchigumori can do to bring out the detail in Tamahagane. So that's why we are using natural stones. For this particular blade, because it's Tamahagane, we're following traditional stone progression, which is traditionally used as Uchigumori or natural stone. And for Tamahagane, I would actually never finish it on a synthetic stone anyway, whether this was kitchen knife or not, because you can't get the detail in the steel from a synthetic stone. This is a synthetic Kaisei. It's hard to find a natural Kaisei, and it's hard to find a good natural Kaisei. And there's quite a few really good variety of synthetic Kaisei, so I prefer to use those for this stage. Yeah, one thing with synthetic Kaisei is that they're really consistent. Of course, I've seen some natural Kaisei before, but the ones I've tried and used, they're just not consistent and they leave deep scratches. So for polishing, if you get deep scratches, you have to remove the scratch. To remove the scratch, you have to remove more steel. Removing more steel on something like that is expensive. Sometimes it's better just to go with what you know for polishing, because you know it works well, rather than continually searching for something that may or not be better. For example, a lot of people say, oh, you can try other stones that can match Uchigumori, but Uchigumori does such an incredible job, and just to keep on looking for something else that can replace something that people have been using for hundreds of years, it's kind of a waste of time when you already know your stones work well. So you want to really just be consistent with the tools, the stones that you have. So I don't tend to really look for other alternatives. I'm just searching for good stuff. I don't know if you can see it, but right there, this one looks a little deep. I hope this stone can remove it, because I really don't want to go back. So, let's see. These longer stretches completely gone, but that one's still there. So, almost still there. I don't think it's gone yet. It's almost like a shadow of a scratch underneath. I'll try a little bit more. It looks like it's gone. I don't see any shadow of the scratch anymore. So, I'm going to assume it's gone. Now we can move on to actually polishing. There's some really light shadows of the scratch from the previous stone. There's really some very fine light scratches going this way. I call them shadows because they're so fine you can only see them in certain light, but you don't really notice them so much now, but when you get to Uchigumori, they really stand out. So you really have to take care of these kind of things right now. The work of Kaisei is finished now. Now we're going to actually be moving on to natural stones from this point on. The first stone I'm going to be using is Chunagura. For this stage of polishing, I decided to use a traditional sword polishing progression, which mainly would consist of Chunagura, Komanagura, and Uchigumori. There's a few other stones, of course, in there in the same category, harder or softer, but that's the basic lineup. So I'm going to be using a Chunagura to start with. Some of the key things that I really love about this stone in particular, in Chunagura, is that it really starts to bring out the really fine details of the hamon and also the steel, the folding or the hara of Tamahagane specifically. And it's really nice at this stage. Me personally, I like to really start kind of envisioning what the blade's going to look like when it's finished. And the work of the Chunagura and what it does to bring out the detail of the hamon and the steel, it really helps me personally to really start to see the finished blade when it's finally polished. So I really like starting with these stones. On Tamahagane specifically, I tend to use the synthetic Chunagura sometimes more for other Honyaki that's not Tamahagane. So natural Chunagura is really a really nice stone for Tamahagane. finished up all the work of Kaisei and the Chunagura. Just taking a little break now. And then we're going to move on to first stages of Komanagura. So this polishing stage, I guess from Chunagura on, to me is more like art to me, rather than, for example, when I do kaiju. Kaiju, it's really performance-based sharpening, all the way up to the final polishing, which is still quite fine, but I don't think of it as art. I really think of it as this is made to cut, and that's all I think of it. Whereas Tamahagane, and with this project we're doing with Sujihiki, I'm thinking about art, that this is an art piece. Of course, yeah, we set everything so that it can perform, so it can cut. But from this stage on, everything I'm thinking about now is really about the beauty of it, the detail, history, and everything about the hamon and the hada, the details. So that's really what the focus is, and the feeling, the emotion moving on is really like it's art to me. I do enjoy this stage a lot. Maybe a lot of people don't really know how many different types of knives I'm sharpening kind of on a weekly, daily basis. So when I get a chance to come back to this kind of work, which I tend to do a lot and really enjoy, I really, really look forward to it. More so than a lot of the other stuff that I'm working on. Okay, let's get back to work. I have a few Komanagura, and they're all categorized as Komanagura, but they're all slightly finer or slightly rough to finer Komanagura. They're all very fine, but they all cut a little bit differently. This particular Komanagura really works really well to remove the Chunagura scratches, but also kind of prepares really nice smooth texture to take the next final Komanagura. So last time when Jonathan, who has on Instagram is Lacaste Toishi, I think, and I'm always asking him when he's here if you ever see anything interesting Komanagura for polishing Tamahagane, let me know. So he was really lucky to have found this one, and I was able to get it from him. Beautiful, beautiful stone. I'm checking how fine the scratch is. Yeah, it's good. It's a nice soft stone. Can you see that? this area of the blade is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, on both sides of the blade, these beautiful white lines running through the area underneath the hamon closer to the edge. On this side and also on this side. But as we get finer and finer with the Komanagura, we really start to see all the incredible detail in the hada, the skin of the blade. I just finished the work of Komanagura, and now I'm going to move on to the last stone in the process, which is Uchigumori. This is the stone I'll be starting with for Jigane. Uchigumori will do a few different things to the Tamahagane blade we're working on and Tamahagane in general. It will smooth out the work that we did from Komanagura. At the same time, it will start to make the hamon wider and bring out all the detail in hamon and in the jigane. And in doing that, you'll set up and prepare the blade for the final stage of polishing. Uchigumori is usually and mainly used for Japanese sword polishing. To my knowledge, there's not to replace Uchigumori. I've never seen other polishers use like Ohira or Ohira Suita or that have similar characteristics but are not categorized as Uchigumori. It's always been Uchigumori, whether it's Mizukihara or Ohira. Often the shops reserve the best stones for sword polishers, as sword polishers are the ones that need it. Sword polishers are not going to be using other stones that are mainly used for tools. They need those specific stones. I haven't decided yet which particular stone I'm going to be using to make the hamon white, but it's going to be one of these three here. Okay, let me start now on the Hagane, or the hamon area of the Sujihiki. See how this stone works. Yeah, this actually, I think this stone really works with this blade. Really making the hamon nice and white, but also bringing out the details clearly. So, yeah, I think you continue with this stone. I finished the blade last night. I guess rest my eyes and look at it in the morning. It's morning. The work of Uchigumori makes it really brings out a lot of the details, makes the hamon whiter, and also gives a much smoother, cleaner look than the previous stone, obviously, that's Komanagura. So overall, everything looks great. The colors are really nice. So in this video, we started from Kaisei, which is much from Kaisei. You can't really see a lot of detail, but you could start to see some detail. So there's a huge difference, obviously, between Kaisei and Uchigumori. The hamon is now starting to have a really nice look, really natural look. You can see a lot more detail. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. This is the last stone that we've been using, and that's going to be the last stone, which is Uchigumori, and next is going to be off the stones and all the polishing work afterwards. Next stage is going to be Wazuya and Jizya stage. So that stage is going to really start to smooth everything out, and then we're going to start to get into the polishing, really the polishing work. After we finish the work of Uchigumori, one of the main points or purpose of Uchigumori is to make the hamon whiter, and also to make the area of the hamon whiter. So a lot of the detail that actually is in the hada is kind of masked right now from the whiteness of the Uchigumori, but that's actually on purpose. Once we go to Jizya and Nugui, all those details will come out. Thanks again for watching this series in this video. If you haven't watched the other videos with the rough sharpening, you can go back and take a look. And thanks again for all your support. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.